The point is that for them, Islam, they see Islam, and they were articulating to us that Islam's remained a liberating force. It protected them, it situated them to survive, and eventually it situated them to progress in the society that oppressed them so much, and they still have areas of oppression to go over. But they're making great strides. For example, we found out, or I found out, that 60% of the chicken served and processed that's just available in that country is halal. So just stop right there. Halal chicken is available to all of the South Africans in a great degree. And there are other areas of activity that the Muslim population is involved in. So in one of our meetings, I asked one of the brothers, his name was Ritwan, very beautiful brother, very critical thinker. Uh, and I asked him, I said, well, how are you all so influential? He gave me the number of, I think it's only about 2 million or 4 million, or it's 2 million Muslims out of 40 million, or something like that. And I said, well, how are you all so influential here in this country? He said, Mandela, our relationship with Mandela. And then he went on to explain that because we stood by the native Africans, the indigenous Africans, throughout the apartheid struggle, we never separated ourselves from them. When Mandela got in office, he opened up a lot of doors for us. I said, that's different from us in America. And he was like shocked. Like he literally stood there because I explained, I said, a lot of Muslims, even because, in South Africa right now, because he was telling me how when their president came to visit our president, they saw that as a moment of disrespect. And they made a lot of jabs at President Trump throughout the weekend, but that's another story. But they saw it as an intense amount of, they saw it as a great disrespect, the way he was treated. So when I shared with him, well, a lot of Muslims in America voted for Trump, he literally stood still, like, he was froze. And he said, what do you mean? And we began to share. And I had to, it made me really, really think about, again, and this is what I'm sharing for this particular session, or this segment, is that what has really affected the Muslims in America. And I'm not going to go into all of the details of my exchange with him, but what eventually came out, which was clear, is that the immigrant Muslims in that part of the earth, in South Africa, they had a different trajectory than the immigrant Muslims that came here to the United States of America. And a part of what I was sharing with him, I have met Muslims from the Islamic world in America as brown as me, but they put on their paperwork that they're white. And I shared with him how, and all of us know this, that there was a serious phenomenon of Muslims coming from other parts of the Islamic world. Whereas we were in the inner city, they set up camp or set up shop in the suburbs. Whereas most of us were working class, poorer class, they came in middle class, upper middle class, pursuing education. And in time, the history of the evolution of these two communities, really, just to get straight to the point, there's never really been any unity. There's never been any real unity. But not only has there not been unity, the greater problem is there hasn't been respect. It's okay for a group of people to have their own history, to have their own interests, even if they're Muslim. But the Muslims who came to the United States of America from the other parts of the Muslim world and established themselves in America, they did not respect the Muslim American leadership that was already in place, and they did not care about the Muslim American agendas that were already in motion before they got here. And they didn't even care about America. If we're going to be honest, they didn't really care about America until 9/11. And even that is a facade more than anything with many of them. And it goes all the way. I think it really came to a head in this recent election. Whereas many of the Muslims in America, and this was some African Americans too, don't get me wrong, they were identifying with the genocide in Gaza, where there's another group that was saying, yes, that genocide is terrible, but we still live here. And the threat is President Trump is a worse option, because if we vote in the Democratic nominee, I don't even want to really use their names. I just use the name, but that's not really the part. The part right now, one party, we at least stand a chance of appealing to their conscience, but another party, we're not going to be able to. And this other party and the candidate that represents this other party, the other people, the other members of American society, such as the African Americans, not even the African American Muslims, they have a rapport with this figure, and they believe that he is racist. He turns a blind eye to racism, so on and so forth. I'm not even saying I agree with all of that. As a matter of fact, I don't. Not in 100%. Not 100%. However, I do understand the argument, and I do agree with it to some percent. Some of the argument to some percent, not 100%. But in the final analysis, the bigger point is Muslims, immigrant Muslims, your concerns aren't the only concerns. We even had Muslims from England, from other parts of the world, because of YouTube and the internet, chiming in on the sentiment and telling us how we should vote here. So what ended up happening, we know that the current president is who he is, and he won, and Muslims helped to do that. So much so that we had Muslims, American Muslims or Muslim Americans, coming out saying, I'm glad he won. So when I was sharing this with the brother, he was just shocked. He was like, he was citing what he was citing. Now, mind you, he comes from his own context, and I'm not saying his view informed by his own context is right. But what I do agree with is the fact that he sees, and the others that were expressing themselves to us, they see Islam as a liberating force. They see the Islam and the Muslims should be on the side of the weak and the oppressed and the disenfranchised. Like the Prophet said, I and the widow are like this. As we hear about in the Quran, the feeding of the poor, so on and so, the ethical value of feeding the poor, caring for the weak, standing up against the oppressor, so on and so forth. And the fact of the matter is, the immigrant Muslim community in the United States of America do not take that stand. They have not. And we don't believe they ever will. And even if they do, they will only do it for political gain, because they want to be white people. That's how they have tried to live up until this point since the 60s. They have sought to live, to be accepted by, to be literally identified as, not always, but many, as whites. And the fact of the matter is, many of them just do not care about our concerns. So they have a different approach to the religion. Not all of them. Now, let me be clear. I don't think every individual immigrant Muslim falls into this category. This arrogance, this desire for dominance, wanting to be the representatives and the voices of Islam in America, ignoring the voices of the Muslim American leadership who are indigenous, or avoiding true connection with the African American Muslim leaders or the African American leaders, etc. I don't think all of them fall into that category. That will be unfair. But I do believe that there is a dominant spirit, if not in the leadership and the people, it's a dominant spirit that for many of us who are in the leadership of the African American Muslim community, we see it as plain as day. We do not identify with them, and this has caused a big rift. Now, the challenge that I would say, so what am I saying? I mean, to get to this point, when it comes to the previous election cycle, the immigrant Muslims sold us out. And I don't think, I don't think that we can get in around that. And they're still trying to position themselves as the voices of Islam in America. And they are voices of Islam, but they're not the voices. And this is why they will lose. They will continue to fail in the long scheme of things, because they want to be the Western man. They don't want to be Muslim in the sense of, see, when we came into Islam, we didn't come into Islam as an adaptive measure. Like, oh, we're here benefiting from the fat of the land. Oh, we need to establish the Friday prayers. Let's build a masjid and hire some foreign imam. No, we were a people searching for God collectively. That was the spirit of the African American people. And in our search for God, God himself brought us into al-Islam. These are two different spirits.